Now back to Joe Declassified. Next up, we're actually coming back to the US with Hooded Cobra Commander. Now, this figure didn't actually come out mint on card afterwards, so a cool version of the character that depicts Cobra Commander in a more casual attire with his hood rather than a battle helmet. The only part of the figure that was new was the head sculpt, and the body was repainted from the original release.
Yeah, this is a cool one. I mean, some of the prototypes have popped up for this, and the test shots, and it really is. It's just the little head. That's it. That's the only thing that was done, and it's kind of cool. The head, the ball joint for the neck is on a peg, and then the hood snaps onto the peg. So it's actually two pieces. At least the prototypes are. It's not one solid cast.
Interesting.
We don't have any images of that.
Yeah, this was the first mail away I had as a kid, and I remember I always thought it was unique because that head was made of a flexible material, whereas the head on all the other figures was a solid ABS. So it almost like the edges of it would bend like a hood would really bend. And I remember thinking as a kid that was probably something extra expensive to make or something. Not knowing now it's probably not, but at the time I thought that was like a real sign of quality. And this figure was available as a mail away. We were talking about this earlier, almost completely from 84 through to the end of the line in 94. Like this thing just kept popping up. It came as a mail away all of those years. It came as a pack in with other mail away figures in some of the collector cases that you could get to haul the figures around in. I've got a couple of examples of that. And this figure was available almost the whole run of the line.
They even had overstock of it after they shut everything down and G.I. Joe 3 3/4 inch was done. There were still some of these Cobra Commanders around. I would imagine if the offer was not a current one, if you mailed away from one, there was probably never a time after 84 that you would not have gotten one.
I should also add that, and this cuts out later on, but in 1987 and going into 1988, Hasbro UK Action Force also released this Cobra Commander, Hooded Cobra Commander, and that was the first Hasbro UK mail-away figure. But I'll mention that now because it makes sense in this particular instance.
I think this figure also parallels Baroness. Baroness also has the softer plastic for her hair. Also came out in 1984, and also both of them appeared in the first issue of the comic book. So it's like that first issue of the comic book came out, and two ideas that ended up in 1984 got put in motion.
My story for Hooded Cobra Commander might be cut out, but my story for Hooded Cobra Commander is when I finally started collecting these toys, like around 1997. Between 97 and 2000, when I was truly collecting G.I. Joe. My local comic book store had a mint and bag mail away Hooded Cobra Commander. And the store owner and I were looking through the Tomart's or Lee's price guide. And the only Cobra Commander that was listed as a mail away was the 1982 with the Mickey Mouse symbol.
Mickey Mouse, yeah.
Say that. It just said, it simply said, it said mail away Cobra Commander, mint and bag price $150. And that was, I was like, oh my gosh, I knew about Cobra Commander, but I didn't actually own any of these toys yet.
You didn't pay $150 for that, did you?
I paid $150 for a Hooded mail away, but I knew the store owner. So it's like 2 years later when I was kind of going through stuff and still actively buying some more, that I found out that I got the wrong Cobra Commander. So I actually showed him the new Tomart's with the new price and showed him how there's two different ones. And he was cool. He gave me all my money back. So,
wow. Must have been a good year for him, so that's fine. This
is actually the store I now work for, so that's how cool he is. I still, 18 years later, I still work for the guy on Sundays. But anyway, that's my Hooded Cobra Commander story.
Fantastic. Incidentally, what was everyone's first mail away, just quickly? Troy, what was yours?
Mine was the Hooded Cobra Commander.
Chris, what was yours?
I never did it.
Okay, brilliant. Pat, what was yours?
Mine was the first Cobra Commander, and I should note that whenever he arrived, he was the swivel arm version. So a lot of people don't realize that they were working on swivel arms that early.
Awesome. I'll get to mine in a little while. First, though, in 1985, we go back to the United Kingdom with the Palitoy Action Force Infantryman, or Grunt, as you guys know him. The fourth and final Palitoy cardback mail-away figure, the Hasbro figure sold during the final year of Palitoy. It required 5 Action Force medals, a completed form, and 35 pence postal order. Maybe they should have cranked those postal order charges up to keep it running, but they didn't. And then, of course, we have the end, basically, of Palitoy in this zone, in this era. Hasbro take over, and that's what we'll get going forward from the UK. But before we get back into the United Kingdom, moving over to the US, we have 1985 and / 1986. We're not 100% sure on the date, and that is Starduster. Art found for this character shows that the original concept was that of a chef. Basic design of the refined art is that of Starduster, but instead of a jetpack, you get an apron and cutlery set. The art is dated 1985. First offered through G.I. Joe Action Stars serial.
Ryan, got your new cereal. How's it look, Duke?
All clear. Go for it. Hit it. Introducing G.I. Joe Action Stars brand cereal, a delicious part of this complete breakfast. Crunchy stars that taste great. So, for all you action stars...
Bye, Mom.
G.I. Joe Action Stars.
Inside later boxes was a free mini-comic showing the adventures of Starduster, and the back of the box had the mail-in offer form to get your very own figure. Early boxes only offered a mail-in t-shirt. Wah, wah. Who had Starduster?
I did not.
I ate tons of boxes of Action cereal in 1985, and I did not know about Starduster for quite some time, because 85 was unfortunately also the year that I wasn't collecting G.I. Joe anymore toward the end of it.
Oh no!
I think Starduster was late 85 that the offer would have even been made. If you even look at some of the earlier stuff that mentions Starduster, there's actually a coupon that is for money off of some Action Stars cereal, but rather than just offering you Starduster, it says, hey, keep a lookout for the offer of Starduster. So
wow,
he probably was offered late in 85, but I would imagine that they may have shipped in 86. Not entirely positive on that. 3D Joe's, we need to talk to him and have a meeting of the minds and see what he knows.
Well, and you know, this art that we just kind of showed is to me is awesome. It's really cool. You know, it shows that, you know, Ron Rudat had created this character of a chef. You know, you see this guy wearing an apron, a meat cleaver, sleeveless shirt, tattoos, you know, a big thug of a military guy, and he's a chef. And then you see the refined art done by someone else, not Ron Rudat, that basically shows Starduster, but he's wearing a chef's apron, and he has the knife instead of a jetpack. Mm-hmm. So, you know, we haven't found any information on this yet. I still don't know what truly happened with this crossover. But, you know, we've kind of always felt that the Action Star serial said, you know, we want to have our own figure. And the Hasbro design team was like, well, it's food. Let's have a military chef. And they kind of started that idea. And I'm sure at some point someone said, kids don't want to play with the chef.
It's not cool enough. Yeah. We need something more dynamic.
Yeah, and Starduster actually did appear in the Action Stars cereal commercial that was in 1985. Right. So I think that may be part of the reason why people are placing the figure in 1985.
Can we talk about the fact that the kid flies away out of the door as well in the commercial? I love that. I love that he just kind of
somehow
just like literally just takes off. I'm like, oh, cool. So Stardust is a G.I. Joe, but you're a superhero. you don't need to be looking up to G.I. Joe, mate. You can probably sort the world out. Go for it.
He has a backpack on. Maybe it's a Matt Tracker backpack.
and once again, you know, this is brilliant marketing. Because it now puts the child in the mindset of like, I can be a G.I. Joe too. I can play. And once again, they're now selling cereal and they're going to sell more toys.
Mate, if we had that cereal here when I was growing up, I'd have been bankrupt. That's all I would have been buying. I'd have been swimming in the stuff.
Yeah. There were no marshmallows. There were no marshmallows in it.
We weren't allowed those in our cereal anyway, so
okay.
It was just brine and dust was all we were allowed.
One of the interesting things when we're trying to pin down the date of Starduster is there is actually issue number 34 of the Marvel Age comic book, which is dated January 1986. Lists a few of the G.I. Joe figures that are soon to be released for the 1986 lineup. And the figure listed is the G.I. Joe Jetpack Trooper. He's not named Starduster at that point. He's actually listed as Hedgehopper. But there's no image of the character, so we can't for sure say that it's Starduster. Dates do seem to line up. And one thing that I would like to point out that may also be useful later to mention is that a cover date of January 1986 does not mean that thing hit the newsstands in January 1986. In order to make it so that shops don't look like they're carrying a bunch of old product, that actually would have hit newsstands in November of 1985 and had a cover date of January 1986. So as of November 85, they would be mentioning Hedgehopper. And it's quite possible that somewhere along the lines of information going back and forth from Hasbro, that was just never changed. I wouldn't imagine that Hasbro would have had approval for a Marvel Age comic book article. So it kind of makes sense that would end up in there with
that's kind of a running theme during that period in some of the kind of additional Marvel books, because like Order of Battle has a number of errors like that in the vehicle book, and obviously, I mean, they included another figure that we're going to talk about later in one of those issues. So
yep, exactly.
Larry Hama would have been doing those file cards, and they would have been saying, hey, these are the figures that we have planned coming up. Think about how you're going to put it in the comic book or not, or whatever. So they probably said that information and like you said, ran with that article.
Plus, there were insert comic books for Starduster in Action Stars serial. So I imagine that Marvel would have been the ones putting those comic books together, at which point Larry would have included him in the lineup of the Joes. And Starduster was very popular, so he was offered again later through Hasbro Direct in some of the insert catalogs. The sad part is, though, that the later ones, I think it was the last one, was included a Pocket Patrol pack. It did not include a jump. No jet for your Jetpack Trooper, sorry.
That figure's so nice. I love that deco.
And you see, we also have images that Ron Rudat did of the color studies that he's actually trying to sell right now if you want to buy them. So we'll put that up. And those are, it just shows the part of the creative process in which, they come up with an idea, they draw what he's going to look like, but now you need to figure out the color scheme and, what will be the final appearance. And so he would color up basically a dozen or so different versions, and then the Hasbro team would pick the one they like best. So for Starduster, that's another cool get to show everybody.
So in 1986, we get Sergeant Slaughter, you maggots.
That Joe's surrounded by Cobras.
Yeah, but that Joe's Sergeant Slaughter.
He's joined the G.I. Joe team.
So we're celebrating by giving away Sergeant Slaughter action figures, but you can't buy them in stores. You've got to earn them. Here's how.
Collect 5 Sergeant Slaughter certificates or call the number on the certificate, and Sergeant Slaughter will tell you how to get in on the action with only 4 certificates. There's a $1 handling charge. See details, specially marked packages.
G.I. Joe. Nobody takes on Cobras better than Sergeant Slaughter.
Professional wrestler Sergeant Slaughter was the first celebrity immortalized as a member of G.I. Joe. The entire figure used an all-new sculpt. No parts were reused to make this figure. There is a variation on the chevrons on his boots listed on yojo.com. It should be pointed out that this variation seems to be prototype and not an actual variation. It is only found on Final Engineering pilot figures that were sent to Hasbro from the factory for review and final comments before mass production. For some reason, Hasbro must have changed the chevrons at this point. All the figures that we have found with this variation have come from a former Hasbro employee. It is very common in the military to put your rank on your ankles and not your arm.
In America.
Yeah, I was going to say I didn't do that in the UK when I dressed up.
I think we maybe actually did manage to get this taken off of the variations list on yojo.com, but we're kind of locked out from changing some of the other variations right now. It's a
sore subject right now, Pat. Can we not talk about it?
It is. You're right. So that figure was actually not available with flag points. Children had to collect certificates as seen in the commercial, and select retail figures and turn those in instead. So I don't know. Like I said, at this point, I wasn't really getting G.I. Joes, so I don't know if an upset letter from my mother would have resulted in a Sergeant Slaughter, but I don't think.
Well, I'd have been writing upset letters all day long if
But
I
they
was.
let you know in advance. They let you know well ahead of time. You know, the commercial for him said, "Hey, this is going to be how you have to get Slaughter," and then the figures actually coming with the things. You knew not to throw that away.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and and it's cool is the form is that tiny little piece of paper that's smaller than the figure that fits behind him. When he's mint on card, and or the other figures that are mint on card. But what was really cool is what's turned up is the original art for that tiny little half-inch picture that's on the card, and the art is like 2 feet tall.
Wow.
And which we have an image of, so we show you this. On that image you can see the mail away offer next to next to it, so we see the size comparison. And that art was done, like we later learned, from BBDO. So it's not Hasbro art; it's done by a marketing firm. And it's cool is that there's an overlay. It's a clear cellophane overlay type of thing with all the black line, and then underneath it's all the color art. It's kind of blurry, and you put the black over it, the line art over it, and then you can see all the details and how they really blend in. So it's actually like a 2-piece art. It's really cool.
So this promotion was like super popular, right? And did that lead to like Hasbro wanting to get more kind of celebrities involved?
Yes, which we're about to talk more about. And in 1987, I got a cool marketing book on it. When we get to that point, I'll talk about too.
Awesome. Well, okay, so that leads us into 1986 and Rocky. I'll have that playing in the background. The figure was never released, but it would have been a mail-away offer. Kirk Bazigian has confirmed this information, so we thought we would talk about it. The figure was first seen by the public in issue 2 of the G.I. Joe Order of Battle comic book. The figure was actually cancelled. Clear up the myth versus the facts of how this happened, guys.
Generally speaking, whenever people found that Rocky was listed, and then in the subsequent Marvel Order of Battle comic book, there was a retraction saying he was not a member of the G.I. Joe team. A lot of people erroneously assume that Hasbro failed to retain the proper rights to Rocky, and that there was a big mistake, and that since it was printed and the deal was not done, that it was somehow pulled. That's not at all what happened. What really happened was that after they'd already made the deal to have Rocky in the G.I. Joe line, Sylvester Stallone's agent also made a deal with Coleco to market Rambo. And if you look at the timeline of all the material we have, you can see how this is supported. So Hasbro basically made the decision that they weren't going to make a major marketing push for G.I. Joe by really pushing what appeared to be the character from somebody else's toy line. I'm just going to kind of tell you some things that fall into some certain dates to make it a little bit clear. In May of 1985, Rambo First Blood Part 2 came out and was a rated R movie. In November of 1985, Rocky 4 came out, and that was a PG movie.
And the greatest movie ever made.
We fought the Russians and won.
Right. Both movies were very much about America. Both of them were. But whenever you're Hasbro and you're kind of trying to look at Stallone as a major star, which one are you going to go with? You're probably going to go with the PG one that is more recent. So they cut this deal with Stallone. And if you actually look at Rocky, there are some similarities to Rambo because he does have the headband on, which I guess Rocky wore a headband at one point, but he didn't have, the tie down, like the ends of the head.
Yeah, he didn't have the blood of his enemies dripping from it either, did he?
Yeah, and you can see from the art, he also has the big bushy hair kind of like Rambo did. So the head almost looks like Rambo.
Exactly. So they definitely were trying to kind of blend the two. So Hasbro actually had planned for, Chris pointed out to me, that Rocky was referred to as a 1986 and a half figure, and the sculpts were on a 1987 sculpt sheet. They actually called out 1987 at the top, but all of the information behind the scenes said that he would have been released in 1986 at the end of the year. Sculpt input drawings, those are the drawings that are made to tell the sculptor what the figure should look like. Those were finished on January 17th, 1986. Coleco debuted Rambo not much later, about a month later, at Toy Fair in 1986. There's actually an LA Times article that I found that described exactly when that happened.
And it was, just to point out, it was at that point Kirk was at that Toy Fair, and that's when Kirk learned about Stallone selling his likeness to Rambo, and that was the point in which they decided to pull the
well, they didn't decide quite in Toy Fair to pull it, because the wheels were kind of still in motion, because March 18th, 1986, Rocky had originally been intended to come with a rifle, which we can actually show you the sculpt input drawings for that here. He was originally going to come with a rifle. Instead, they decided to change it so that he would come with a pugil stick, where you could take his boxing gloves off and put them on each end of the stick. And the well, I guess we should call it package art, but whether or not he would have ended up packaged is still kind of in question. He definitely was going to be a mail-in. But the art for Rocky depicts him holding that stick with the gloves on the end, but those would have been removable and been able to go on his hands. So in March 18th, the accessory changes were finished, and the Rocky sculpture, a week later on March 25th, 1986, that's when the sculpture was finished. So the last thing that I see from Hasbro is March 25th, 1986. Marvel Order of Battle has a cover date of January 1987. But as we mentioned before, and Troy alluded to, this actually would have been in the stores in November of 1986. So basically what I'm saying is there's about a 6-month gap between that sculpt being finished on March 18th and the time whenever that comic book would have been being compiled or written sometime late in 1986. So not really sure where the miscommunication there is. I think what we can conclude from these dates is that Rocky was in the roster that was sent over to Marvel, and they still had him in the roster. And chances are the deal had already fallen through. Otherwise, the Rocky figure would have already been promoted, and that would have been about the right time for it to have come out toward the end of 86. And it would have been great to have him on the cover and in the comic, but the deal was already done, and he accidentally still ended up in the issue.
Well, and, the figure was done by Bill Merklin sculpting. So, we have the photos that we're showing here. And one of the cool things that Bill did, he did this on a few characters. I know he did it with Payload. I know he did it with Rocky, and he might have done it with others. But before he would actually sculpt the head of the figure on the buck, on the armature, he would do basically a little miniature mini bust, like a portrait bust. And like from watching TV and stuff like that. So you can really get the idea, the details and how it looks. And then he would use that characteristics and that look that he would then resculpted again onto the buck piece. So that's one of the pictures we have here, as you see the miniature bust. And as you can see, it's only like 2 inches tall. It's a tiny little thing. So it's cool. He actually did it at the 2-up scale on that bust. And another cool thing he did is he also was the one that sculpted the gloves. And instead of sculpting gloves separately, he sculpted them onto the lower arm portion of a buck. So it's actually sculpted over the hand. And that would have been used by Hasbro to eventually make, the boxing gloves that we did get out of the soft rubber. But he did the figure and he also did the boxing gloves. So I thought that was cool.
Very cool. I think that would have been an amazing figure. Like, it would have been great. So cool visually. Like, the face is incredible.
It's one of my favorite canceled figures. I would have loved to have had that. Thing's fantastic.
Let's contact Bill and see if he can knock one up. Yep.
Well, I know who has the little mini bus, so I can get that to him.
Let's get that casted. Let's hurry up. Right. Right. So in 1987, then we come to another major celebrity in the G.I. Joe franchise, and that is the Fridge.
He's getting mad. He's getting mean.
breaking the line for the G.I. Joe team.
That's right, it's William the Refrigerator Perry.
The fridge destroying G.I. Joe.
And you can get a free fridge. Here's how.
Collect 5 fridge certificates or call the number on the certificate and the fridge will tell you how to get in on the action with only 4 certificates. There's a $1 handling charge. See details on specially marked G.I. Joe packages.
Watch out, Cobra. Fridge is coming through.
Yo, Joe.
Hasbro continued the popular success of using real-life cult celebrities with William Refrigerator Perry. He was an NFL star and fan favourite Chicago Bear defensive lineman, and one of my favourites, although Walter Payton was my ultimate favourite player. At the time, he was famous being the heaviest player to score a rushing touchdown. During his rookie year of 1985, he scored many touchdowns and will be remembered for a play in Super Bowl 20, which he was given the ball and made the touchdown.
From that angle, may we get another view. First of all, the reality of first and goal. Perry. That one registered 3.8. Another Super Bowl record, the first refrigerator to score.
And the largest running back ever to score a touchdown.
And Walter Payton, I guess they figure they got a whole quarter to go.
And they're going to run out of footballs the way they're going.
Well, they had 36 to start.
I'd have to say I was a massive Bears fan as a kid. My dad bought me a Walter Payton jersey when I was really little, in 85, so I'd have been 4 or 5 years old. And I remember rocking that with foam padding inside as the to fill it out. Absolutely, mate, loved that. And I was a huge Walter Payton Bears fan as a kid. Like, loved it. And that was like the first Super Bowl I remember seeing on TV. Like, it was like really, really late, and my dad let me stay up and kind of watch it with him, and it was wicked. Loved it.
He was a fun character. I wasn't that much of a football fan, but even I remember watching that one, and seeing that one. That was a cool event. That's why I wanted to show it again now, because it's like seeing this 300-something pound man, making a touchdown and helping win the Super Bowl. I thought that was awesome.
He has a really interesting accessory too, the football mace, and the way it's molded, where it really becomes a football stick that you can swing at people. Like,
it's supposed to be a big wrecking ball, shaped like a football.
I managed to get that figure in Rogue Toys in Vegas like a number of years ago, but it was like obviously way after the fact. Like, I didn't even know it existed until later years, and then when I knew it was of its existence, I need to get that figure so bad. Managed to pick it up from Rogue Toys. It was an amazing purchase. So
basically, this figure, also has some variations. I believe it's the armbands. You can get them like red, blue, and white, or blue, white, and red, something like that. I believe there's a variation like that.
Well, the armbands have a base color of white, and then the red and blue are kind of reversed in which side that they're on. So yeah, there's definitely some variations. Collecting him can be a challenge.
I'll just have the one, thanks.
Yeah. And we have a copy of the presentation art that was done by Hasbro to share. I know the actual art that was on the little insert was sold many years ago on eBay, and that art was done by a marketing company, so that wasn't Hasbro art for the actual on the little insert. It might have been done by BBDO, I don't know. But as I just said, basically this figure also, like the Sergeant Slaughter, was not available to children through flag points. You had to collect the little inserts that came on the packaged figures and turn those in with a handling fee. But as the commercial showed for Sergeant Slaughter and for the fridge, kids for 50 cents could call a 1-900 number and get one free certificate, so they didn't have to buy a figure.
So, 1987 continues with the Steel Brigade. First, create a character that allowed the child to create a character or create themselves as a character in the G.I. Joe universe. You'd fill out the mail-away offer form and choose your own codename, skills, weapons expertise, abilities, etc. of your figure. With that information, Hasbro made you a personalised file card for your Steel Brigade figure, or Special Corps in the UK, but we'll come on to that later.
So this was another interesting one, in that the only thing that was new on this particular figure is the head. So like Cobra Commander, Hooded Cobra Commander, the head was newly sculpted, and that was done by I don't know, never mind. But that was so but the body is interesting, and that's why we have so many variations. The body is interesting because that was made from just other parts that Hasbro had available. You know, like they chose them, you know, like what molds were available for them to create the 6 different versions of that figure, I believe there are.
Wow.
4.
I was going to say, I thought it was 4. It's one. It's A, B, C, and D, right?
4 variations on the first version of the figure, and then in addition, in 1992, you had the gold head Steel Brigade.
Yeah.
So if you really want all of them, it's 5 figures total.
Okay.
And we'll get onto it later, but the special core version in the UK used the version 1D in the US, which was like the last one. Yeah.
I have a story about this figure, or I guess a gripe about this figure, aside from all the variations. But around 1991, I sent off for a Steel Brigade figure, and I can
91
remember filling out the form with my parents in our house, and we sent off for it, and it never came. But Hasbro cashed the check, and my mom was so mad about it that through the rest of the line, I never got to order any more mail. So
I wrote a letter.
I know.
Yes, sternly worded.
Only we'd known writing a letter would clear that up. I should have. We should have been asking Pat's mom at the time, but
Naughty Hasbro.
I know, right? And it's I mean, it's a fun figure, and I think it's a great promotion. That idea that, you know, any kid can be a member of the G.I. Joe team. I mean, I think that's a fantastic selling point. But
it was Dream World.
Think about that. And we went through that whole order form, and my mom and dad had to explain what all the options were to me, because I didn't understand what some of the, you know, like what the different kinds of jujitsu are or whatever when you were picking out your martial arts.
It was so much fun, wasn't it?
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I think it's a great promotion. So
on my file card, I changed my mind when I got my file card back, so I Tipp-X'd out one of the abilities, and I changed it with it, like, you know, right over it in a pen. So yeah, that's the kind of
another interesting thing. I actually know a guy who had sent off for Steel Brigade, and when he got it back, Hasbro had changed the name that he had chosen, because he had chosen Wildcard, and then that was a figure that they were actually producing. So they had changed the name on his Steel Brigade.
I wonder how many times that happened.
Do you know what they changed it to?
So it was Wildcard. They shortened it just to Card. That's Don Anderson, who's the collector. And that
out of the two options there, out of the two options, they did not choose the right one, did they? I think I'd have preferred Wild than Card. That's amazing. Amazing.
So you know, we got, you know, as Pat mentioned earlier, we got the version 2, which is the gold head, you know, in 92. But one of the interesting things that's popped up was a FEP or VSP of this figure, in which it shows an earlier paint option, and that was basically the all blue Steel Brigade. And I kind of like this one better. To me, you know, here's an image from it off of yojo.com, but to me, it's beautiful. I would love to have that version of the figure. And
I prefer the one that came out, but there is something striking about that one. I want one.
Yeah. And, you know, and also, you know, you can see the imagery that we have here of the presentation art and stuff like that. And one of the interesting things is that the very first concept for the first idea for the legs on the Steel Brigade was he was going to have Doc's crotch and legs. So they ended up changing that afterwards. But originally, instead of having the little steel spike things from Alpine on his legs or scrap iron, he was going to have little medicine vials from Doc.
To be honest, you know, you mentioned earlier that it's, you know, it's a reuse of a lot of parts, but you don't really notice that with the color skit, like the decos they put on them. Like, you almost get away with it, like being a completely different figure, and the head is so iconically different as well. It really stands out. So you almost like puts like a mist over the body as you're looking at it. Like, you don't really notice that it's you know, like a kit bash kind of thing. But I absolutely adore it. I think it's one of my favorite figures that exists, definitely, just because of like what Troy said, what it represents to a child, like that, bringing you into the universe. It's just unreal. Staying in 1987, Marketing Research Report. Let's show an image of that classic action figure. There we go. So this was for children ages 6 to 12 who indicated that they preferred to what they preferred to buy at a store, where they may compare a selection of toys, can examine the toy they're most interested in, and can experience immediate gratification of playing with the toy.
Basically, Hasbro would do market research with kids, and I believe that Chris attained a copy of the actual report. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, they did this multiple years, and this just happens to be the one from 1987. And so Hasbro would do this marketing report, basically trying to figure out how kids played with toys, what toys they liked. It focused on their Hasbro product, but they also talked about other toy lines because they wanted to know basically how their competition was doing. Did children like this toy over their toy type of scenario? And so basically these kids were given toys to play with. They were then they were asked questions. They were divided up into age groups. And this is a really interesting thing that kind of has a lot of details that, I don't know, I just really like. So I wanted to point it out because there are some aspects in this that had to do with mail away. And so we don't think we've ever truly talked about this on any of our other panels or any of the other articles that we've written in our magazine. So I wanted to kind of showcase it here. This was something our friend Gary Goggles had come across. Somebody in California was at a flea market and they bought it. They had 2 of it. So that person kept one and then sold this other one to Gary. And then Gary ended up selling it to me. But what was really cool about this is, like I said, it was geared, like Chris said, it was geared to age kids 6 to 12. And they're divided up like 6 to 9, 9 to 12. I think they're different ages groups. And then they were done in 4 different cities, I believe it was. Children to indicate what they preferred to buy in the so one of the things that showed is that the marketing, that the mail away wasn't as popular, I guess, as a lot of us remember it being, because the children between 6 and 12, they indicated that they preferred to buy their toys from the store because they wanted that immediate gratification of getting their toy now rather than waiting. I mean, kids.
Yeah.
So the number of the kids, a lot of the kids were not even aware at the time of the mail away option, but those that were, a lot of them kind of had some things to say, and they basically pointed out negative past experiences, where they didn't get the toy that they ordered.
Troy.
This flag, yeah, there you go. The flag point system required the purchase of too many items.
Pat.
That wasn't the flag point system.
That was Troy's mom and Pat's mom right there, straight away.
And then one of the polls was they asked the questions between children that were 6 and 7. On the aspect of the Sergeant Slaughter and Refrigerator Perry, where you had to call in to get a discount, the 6 and 7-year-olds thought telephoning can be scary, so they didn't like it. But it was interesting, the older children who did use the telephone, they thought it was quite exciting, per the report.
Amazing.
So, and another thing that kids complained about is the ordering took too long. I mean, that was 6 to 8 weeks, I think, was the average. So, they felt it took too long. Once again, they wanted immediate gratification. So another aspect of this report that I found that was interesting is Hasbro asked children who they knew. They were basically figuring out the children who they felt were cults of personality, celebrities, football stars, sports sports celebrities, people like that, because they were looking for
Declassified team members.
Yes, I mean, there should have been a Troy McGee action figure, but that's another panel. So they're basically wanting to know who else they should make figures for in the future. And kids basically didn't have a lot of feedback. They weren't like, ooh, I know a lot of things. But the 2 biggest ones that they mentioned were Max Headroom and Michael J. Fox. So, in 1987, kids really liked them, but we never got them. Kids did mention that they knew and they had some familiarity with Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, Sugar Ray Leonard,
of course,
Refrigerator Perry, who they already made. So I guess they were making sure like the kids, they knew who these people were. But one really cool thing I thought was really cool in this is that Hasbro specifically asked this marketing term to ask the children and engage their awareness and interest level in Mike Tyson.
Wow.
So This was when Mike Tyson was the biggest thing. He was on TV. Everyone thought he was amazing and they loved him. And what I thought this is so cool, is if they had made the Mike Tyson per the timeline that it takes to make a figure and per the time this marketing report came out, they would have released Mike Tyson the same year that he was accused of beating his wife, Robin Givens.
Wow.
In a very messy public divorce.
Wow.
So that would have been devastating for Hasbro, I think, if that ended up happening.
Yeah, they dodged a bullet there.
Yeah. And
they ended up releasing a Mike Tyson figure anyway. If you go into the Street Fighter 2 scenario of things and the Balrog, or M Bison, or M Bison as he was known in Japan.
Excellent point. Yes.
But anyway, moving on.
So, another thing that was interesting about this in this report is some children were basically criticizing the toy line, the G.I. Joe line, specifically kids that were between 6 and 12. And they were stating that there were some items within the toy line just did not fit the line. Specifically, they mentioned Battle Force 2000. I don't know if they mentioned, they didn't mention Battle Force 2000. They mentioned futuristic type toys. And they also, one child specifically said, the refrigerator Perry with the quote, "What's he got to do with it?" So
is that Tina Turner?
I don't know. I guess he wasn't as popular with everyone as we remember him being popular. But so this I thought was a really interesting piece of marketing history. And like I said, it talks about Transformers, talks about My Little Pony, talks about, I believe, He-Man and some other stuff. But specifically, these were, to me, the most interesting aspects about G.I. Joe in the report.
A couple of things that stand out to me there is that as a kid, I liked the mail away aspect because of the excitement and the kind of different, the difference about it. And usually it was a figure that you're not going to get anywhere else. So it kind of like, you kind of felt like you had to do it if you wanted to get that figure. But if I was given that question as a child in a focus group, I would have the same response. I would say, yeah, I want to buy all of the figures and I want to have them immediately. Right. Of course you would. Why would you not? But like, you don't think about that in the moment necessarily until you're given that question, I don't think. So I don't think it's like, I don't think a lot of these kids, I don't think it was on their mind. I don't think they were going, do you know what? I don't like this mail away process because it's taking too long, et cetera, et cetera. They'd just be like, oh, where's my figure? I want my figure. And then they get their figure and they're like, yay. So like, I think, given that question in that situation, that context is slightly different, isn't it?
Well, and like you said, I want it now, not 8 weeks from now. But the thing to take away from this and remember is Hasbro Direct was incredibly successful. It made them a lot of money and they continued doing it. So even though they had these critiques in these marketing reports, research groups, it still did not stop them from making them. And we're only in 1987. We got to go all the way to 2008. We still have more toys that are cool to talk about that were made because of this.
Joe Declassified will return after these messages.